welcome to My Take, our new show where we cut through the noise and give you straight analysis on the stories that matter most. This replaces our daily news update format, and we're bringing you deeper dives, sharper commentary, and unfiltered perspective. Today marks the first broadcast of My Take. We have a packed show. First, we'll break down the failed America-Iran ceasefire negotiations and what the collapse of those talks really signals, because I believe there is far more strategic calculation behind the scenes than the media is letting on. Then we'll turn to California, where Congressman Eric Swalwell has suspended his gubernatorial campaign amid explosive sexual misconduct allegations and the reopening of the Fang Fang Chinese intelligence case. And finally, we'll take a close look at Republican candidate Steve Hilton, who just received President Trump's full endorsement and is making a serious run at the governor's mansion.
We have not reached an agreement, and I think that's bad news for Iran much more than it's bad news for the United States of America.
Let's start with Iran. The first round of ceasefire negotiations between the United States and Iran collapsed in Pakistan, where Vice President Vance led the American delegation. The talks stretched over 21 grueling hours before breaking down entirely. And the reason is exactly what most analysts predicted. Iran refused to surrender its nuclear program. Not a single concession. Not even a framework for phased disarmament. Now, here's what I want you to think about. Was this outcome a surprise to the Trump administration? Absolutely not. President Trump and his military and intelligence teams are not amateurs. They wargamed this scenario long before the first shot was fired. Which brings me to a critical question. Did Trump's team account for the Strait of Hormuz? Of course they did. This morning at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, the United States officially began blockading the Strait of Hormuz, one of the most strategically vital choke points on the planet. Roughly 20% of the world's oil supply passes through that narrow passage. The U.S. Navy is now preventing ships from entering or exiting Iran's port, and any vessel that pays Iran for transit rights will face penalties. But here's the deeper question I keep coming back to. If Trump had already calculated the Hormuz factor, and I believe he had, why did he wait until now to pull that trigger? And why has he been so publicly vocal about NATO's failure to support the operation, almost sounding frustrated and isolated? I'll tell you why. This is deliberate political theater with a very specific domestic audience in mind, and that audience is the United States Senate. Trump is building a case, brick by brick, to prove two things. First, that Iran is an existential nuclear threat. And second, that NATO is an unreliable alliance that leaves America to fight alone when it matters most. If he can establish both of those arguments with undeniable evidence, he has the political ammunition to pursue what many believe is a longer-term goal, withdrawing the United States from NATO. That would require either a two-thirds Senate majority or an act of Congress. There is, however, a significant legal obstacle. A provision embedded in the 2024 National Defense Authorization Act, passed in 2023, explicitly prohibits a president from unilaterally withdrawing from NATO without congressional approval. Trump knows this, which is exactly why he needs the votes. There's another fascinating shift worth noting. Before hostilities began, Trump was openly talking about regime change in Iran. That language quietly disappeared once the war started. Why? Because the American public will not rally behind an open-ended nation-building mission. We've seen that movie before in Iraq and Afghanistan, and it doesn't end well politically or militarily. But eliminating a nuclear weapons program, that's a cause most Americans, regardless of party, can get behind. It's a clear, defined objective with a beginning and an end. And conveniently, the failed Pakistan talks handed Trump exactly the evidence he needed. Iran's refusal to give up its nuclear program after 21 hours of negotiation is now on the record. It validates the entire premise of the military operation. It tells the American people, and more importantly, the Senate, that diplomacy was tried and Iran chose weapons over peace. That is a powerful political and moral argument heading into the midterm election cycle, where both funding and voter sentiment will determine how much runway this administration has to finish what it started. In a recent interview, President Trump made a comment that I think deserves more attention than it received. He said, and I'm paraphrasing, that everyone wants to be the president of the United States, but nobody wants to be Iran's president. On the surface, it sounds like typical Trump bravado, but read between the lines, that statement was a direct message to the Iranian leadership. He was signaling that the regime is vulnerable, that its internal legitimacy is crumbling, and that its leaders are afraid, not of America necessarily, but of their own people. Trump has set a hard deadline with a specific date and time for military escalation if Iran does not come to terms. Yet I believe, and the evidence supports this, that Trump does not actually want to bomb Iran into rubble. What he wants is for the regime to collapse from within or to negotiate its own peaceful exit. That is a far more humane outcome than total war and is strategically smarter. Think about what Iran looked like before the 1979 Islamic Revolution. It was a pro-Western constitutional monarchy under the Shah, a country undergoing rapid modernization with growing social freedoms for its middle class, a thriving economy, and a close strategic alliance with the United States. The revolution didn't liberate the Iranian people. It replaced one form of authoritarianism with a far more repressive theocracy that has kept the country isolated and impoverished for nearly 5 decades. In decades, a return to something resembling that pre-revolutionary openness will be a genuine win, not just for America's strategic interests, but for the Iranian people themselves. And geopolitically, the ripple effects will be enormous. Peace in the Middle East will become far more achievable, and China would lose access to the discounted Iranian oil that has been quietly fueling its economy and funding its global ambitions. The same logic applies to Venezuela. Cut off both pipelines, and you meaningfully weaken Beijing's leverage on the world stage. The clock is still ticking. President Trump's deadline has not yet expired, and Iran has only a few days left to decide. Let me be blunt. Iran has no leverage here. Their proxies have been degraded. Their economy is under maximum pressure. Their population is restless. The Strait of Hormuz is now under American control. Every card they might have played has either been blocked or neutralized. A ceasefire, even one with painful concessions, is objectively in Iran's best interest right now. The question is whether the regime's pride and its survival instincts will allow its leaders to see that clearly. Now let's turn to California and one of the most dramatic political collapses we've seen in recent memory. Congressman Eric Swalwell, who just weeks ago was considered a frontrunner for the California governor's race, is now watching his entire political career implode in real time. 4 women have come forward with allegations of sexual misconduct against him, including a former staffer who has accused him of rape. These are not vague accusations. As of April 12, 2026, Swalwell has officially suspended his campaign for governor of California. The announcement came swiftly after the allegations became public, and the speed of his exit tells you everything about how untenable his position had become. Here's what we know. On April 10, 2026, both the San Francisco Chronicle and CNN published simultaneous reports detailing accusations from 4 women. One former staffer alleged that Swalwell sexually assaulted her on multiple occasions, including incidents where she was too intoxicated to give consent. The coordinated nature of the reporting across multiple outlets signals that this was a thoroughly sourced and vetted story, not a last-minute political hit. Fang had been involved in local political activities, including fundraising for Swalwell and helping place an intern in his office, actions consistent with influence-building efforts. After being briefed by the FBI in 2015, Swalwell says he cut ties with her and she left the U.S. He's a former senior advisor to British Prime Minister David Cameron, a veteran political strategist with deep roots in both European and American conservative politics, and a former Fox News host who built a significant national following. He is now running for governor of California in the June 2, 2026 primary, and he may be the most formidable Republican candidate the state has seen in years. A House Ethics Committee review ended in 2023 without action against him, and Swalwell has maintained he was unaware of any intelligence links. However, the FBI's renewed review suggests there may still be unresolved questions. The situation has gained additional attention due to separate allegations against Swalwell, creating overlapping legal, political, and national security concerns that could significantly impact his political future. What we are watching in real time is an extraordinary standoff, a sitting U.S. congressman battling the FBI in court to prevent the release of intelligence files about his relationship with a Chinese spy. Whatever the ultimate outcome, that alone is a story that should concern every American, regardless of party. With Swalwell out of the race, let's talk about who's stepping into the media spotlight on the Republican side, because there is one candidate who deserves serious attention. Steve Hilton is not your typical California Republican. He's a former senior advisor to British Prime Minister David Cameron, a veteran political strategist with deep roots in both European and American conservative politics, and a former Fox News host who built a significant national following. He is now running for governor of California in the June 2, 2026 primary, and he may be the most formidable Republican candidate the state has seen in years. Swalwell has denied everything, calling the allegations false and nakedly political. But actions speak louder than words, and on April 12, 2026, he suspended his campaign, citing the need to focus on his legal defense. If the allegations were truly baseless, one might expect a fighter like Swalwell to stay in the race and fight. His exit suggests the situation is far more complicated than his public denials indicate. To understand the full scale of this collapse, just weeks ago, Swalwell was considered one of the leading contenders to replace Governor Gavin Newsom in the 2026 race. He had name recognition, a national fundraising network, and the backing of prominent Democrats. All of that has evaporated in a matter of days. And if the sexual misconduct allegations weren't enough, the Fang Fang case has come roaring back. Many of you will remember this one because it never fully went away, it just got buried. The controversy surrounding Eric Swalwell and his past connection to Christine Fang has resurfaced and intensified in April 2026. This follows a decision by FBI Director Kash Patel to review records from the original investigation, which dates back over a decade. Swalwell's legal team has pushed back strongly, threatening legal action to prevent the release of those files, arguing that doing so would be politically motivated and harmful to his campaign. At the same time, some argue the public has a legitimate interest in understanding the extent of his past interactions with a suspected foreign intelligence operative. The legal exposure doesn't stop at the campaign trail. The Manhattan District Attorney's Office has opened an investigation into a specific allegation that an assault occurred in New York City in 2024. A congressional suspension of a campaign is one thing, a criminal indictment is another matter entirely. The political abandonment has been swift and brutal. Senator Adam Schiff and Representative Jimmy Gomez, two of Swalwell's most prominent Democratic allies, have both withdrawn their endorsements. Multiple voices within the Democratic Party are now calling on him to resign not just from the governor's race, but from his congressional seat entirely. When your own party turns on you this fast, the writing is on the wall. On the Republican side, Representative Anna Paulina Luna has announced she will file a formal motion to expel Swalwell from Congress altogether, and remarkably, some Democrats have signaled they may not stand in the way. That is an extraordinary development. Expulsion from Congress requires a two-thirds vote, and bipartisan support, even quiet support, makes that threshold far more realistic than it would normally be. Here's what I find genuinely fascinating about this story, and I want you to think about this carefully. CNN and the San Francisco Chronicle, two outlets that have historically been protective of Democratic politicians, broke this story. Not Fox News, not the New York Post. The left's own media infrastructure reported on one of their own gubernatorial candidates. Ask yourself, when did CNN ever run a hard-hitting investigative piece on President Biden's cognitive decline? When did the San Francisco Chronicle dedicate front-page resources to Hunter Biden's corruption? The selective application of journalistic scrutiny has been one of the defining media critiques of the last decade. So when these same outlets go after one of their own, it either means the evidence was so overwhelming they had no choice, or there are other political calculations at play within the Democratic Party about who they want and don't want representing them in California. As of April 2026, the Republican primary race in California remains competitive, mainly between Steve Hilton and Chad Bianco. Hilton received a strong endorsement from Donald Trump, which could be a major advantage, but the state party has not officially backed any candidate after neither reached the required delegate threshold at the convention. This leaves the outcome to primary voters, with a divided field potentially benefiting candidates with broader visibility. Polling suggests Hilton may have some crossover appeal in the general electorate, which is notable in a traditionally Democratic-leaning state. Hilton's campaign centers on a positive populism platform focused on tangible economic and social reforms. Key proposals include major tax changes, eliminating income tax on the first $100,000 and introducing a flat rate above that, lowering gas prices by reducing state regulations, addressing housing affordability by reforming zoning and regulatory barriers, and shifting education policy toward basic academic performance and reduce bureaucracy. Overall, his platform is designed to contrast with existing policies in California and appeal to working and middle-class voters. This is my take for today. I'd like to hear your thoughts to help me deepen my knowledge as well. Please comment below. See you tomorrow. Remember to tune in to our program every Monday to Friday for My Take, where we explore the latest trending topics together. We also bring you weekly health updates every Sunday, along with our travel show Trip Talk, where we discover the wonders of the world. Be sure to follow Laura Tang Media to stay up to date with our diverse range of content. Don't forget to click the notification bell and subscribe to our channel so you'll be the first to receive our latest updates. Remember to tune in